All right, our final speaker for the session is Sarah Jamison. She's a service hydrologist for the National Weather Service out of Cleveland, and she's going to tell us about NOAA's focus on HABs. It's right here.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Is anyone here unfamiliar with NOAA? Okay, great. Want to put that up front there. I do work for NOAA, but I work for the National Weather Service. And I want to thank Jeanette for inviting me here in a week where you have a tornado, a flash flood, and snow.
You're welcome.
Welcome to Erie. Sidebar, I was working on Sunday. I was a little bit of the flash flood warning for the area. And I was here on Monday assessing your tornado, classifying it as a tornado. So I've been up here quite a bit lately. But when it comes to specifically harmful algae blooms, NOAA is really starting to take off in this program. And again, I'm not a subject matter expert. The people in this room probably know a lot more than I do. I'm a meteorologist, not a chemist or ecologist, so please be forgiving. I wanted to come here today because I am becoming more involved in the algae problem on Lake Erie. It's becoming the green monster in my life. Again, this is not something we were ever really taught, but because weather has an active role in the development of the algae bloom, I'm learning. And every time I go to these conferences, I'm learning even more. But be patient with me. Okay, so when it comes to NOAA's role in the HAB problem, as you can see from this map, this is not exclusive to the Great Lakes. This is a problem that they're trying to address nationally. And we do have some congressional authorizations to investigate into the algae problem. Our mandate is specifically for detection, monitoring, assessment, forecasting, research, education, and outreach for the coast and the Great Lakes. Who's not familiar with the 2014 water crisis in Toledo? Talk about shedding a light on a problem. And it's unfortunate that had to come to this, but this really did get a lot of federal interest in the algae problems. I'm also just recently joined the Western Lake Erie Drainage Basin Executive Board. Again, where I'm learning a lot more about algae, where I get to hear about a lot of the federal resources trying to address this problem. And then I get to learn a lot more about the problem and some of the things they're trying to do to mitigate it. But anyways, I digress. This, again, really jump-started NOAA's role in the HAB program. Okay, detection and monitoring. I don't think I really need to talk about this given everything that I've heard in the room, but for those of you who may not be familiar, GLEROL, one of the big NOAA entities here in the Great Lakes, they have a lot of water quality stations. I did the same thing you did. How did you do that?
Hit it again.
Hit it again. Okay, so where's the
The
mouse?
middle one.
The middle one. Okay, they're all different. All right, so here's just an example of one of the water sampling stations and the daily observations over time. As you can see, we have a fair number of stations. Now, these are just the ones that NOAA primarily maintains. But going to GLOSS, you can see that there's a lot of other entities that collaborate with NOAA. Limnotech, I work with you guys here, is another great resource of information on water quality monitoring and sampling. So it's certainly not just NOAA's role. There's a lot of other agencies that we work with. The beautiful Maumee River in Toledo. You can't talk about algae without this one stealing all the limelight. Not only do you have the largest drainage basin going into the shallowest part of the shallowest Great Lake, and it also happens to be about 90% agriculture. It's not a problem that's going to be solved overnight, that's for sure. But yeah, this was a picture of it this September, so it kind of speaks for itself. NOAA Event Response Program, NCOS, one of NOAA's many acronyms, National Centers for Coastal Ocean Sciences. They have basically a response team, and I kind of stumbled across this, but it looks like back in 2013, they responded to the algae bloom here in Presque Bay. So this is kind of like a short fuse, not a continual monitoring program, but basically on an as-needed basis, they can be deployed. I believe the funding is for less than $5,000 with these programs, but it is something that is available if there's a crisis situation. I don't know if anyone's familiar with this. I had not learned about this until last week. This phytoplankton monitoring network. In the Weather Service, we have spotters, weather spotters, and co-op observers who measure, rain and snow. Well, I guess we have a spotter program for people who want to measure algae and toxins. Anyone familiar with this program? I wasn't either. But when I showed this presentation to my counterparts at the National Ocean Service, they were more than happy to fill me in on this program. So they wanted me to promote it, but it sounds like we have a lot of observations already going on in this area. I'm not sure, how much of the National Ocean Service is involved with any of the water monitoring that you guys do in Presque Bay. Before coming here, I anticipated a question, and I'll get to it here in a moment, the forecast that the Weather Service tries to do for Lake Erie. And I'm like, well, why is Presque not included in that bulletin? And yes, there is a scale difference, obviously, Presque is a fairly small watershed. But part of the reason I heard too had to do with these sampling sites, the need for sampling data. And after everything I've heard here today, I don't see that as a data void. But I don't know, this may just be a misinterpretation on my part, but it seems like maybe I need to communicate with you guys and maybe with my counterparts in Washington, D.C. about some of the information I just heard here today. Okay, research. I have no control over grants. I'm in no way involved with that. Okay, understand the drivers of the bloom ecology, which will aid in enhancing and predictive models that forecast bloom size, location, and toxicity. I think it's pretty well understood what drives the HABs. I don't think that's really where the research is going into. It seems like the real problem is trying to predict, how the HAB is going to develop, and most importantly, the toxicity. We talk about the scale of the HAB, but really trying to predict anything in the amount of toxicity seems to be the biggest challenge, and that's where they're focusing a lot of the research grants and money into the forecasting of the toxicity. A few of the things that they use, in fact, this top right image, this robotic lab, that's something that just went in this summer. Again, this is geared more towards the Western Basin, but it's basically, they call it a lab in a can, where it does all the work that you guys have been doing. I guess it's automatic. I can't attest to the quality of the data. This is just deployed, but it's great to see the real boom in technology and research tools. Of course, NASA's got a lot of things that they're working on, a lot of robotics and aerial spectral tools, and NOAA's heavily involved with that. Okay, this is where I get involved in the algae program. The Weather Service information from a few days to seasonal forecast and observational data gets used into a lot of what NOAA puts together in their forecast. Has anyone seen this before? Okay. Just wanted to see. So the early season forecast, it's a very technical product. A lot of your boat tourists, beach goers have a hard time interpreting these products. We're all scientists in this room, so it's, pretty easy for us. But what people want to know is how bad is it going to be? So the early season projection comes out usually sometime in May or June, and then they do a follow-up in July, because it's usually that loading that occurs during those early, late spring, early summer weeks that drive a lot of your sourcing. Okay, so here's just a look at one of the events. This was from this year. So we had a pretty heavy rain event right in the Maumee Basin, the worst basin to get the heavy rain, of course, the biggest driver that flows right in western Lake Erie. And after this rain event, looking at the bioavailable phosphorus, it shot up. And so that had a dramatic effect from the early season to what they were initially anticipating for the algae bloom. And that's how they kind of try to narrow this down a little bit. It's like a weather forecast. Well, it could be 40, it could be 60 degrees out, and then as we get closer, we try to narrow that down. So once we actually get into the bloom season, that's when we get the HAB bulletin. That comes out twice a week. That's issued by the National Ocean Service. And again, you can see from these plots that it does not extend much beyond Cleveland. So at this point, it's not including Presque Bay. Discussions for another day. There's also Glarol, which has a HAB tracker. Has anyone seen this HAB tracker before? A few heads nodding. What I love about the HAB tracker, it's experimental, whereas the bulletin is operational, is that this you can actually see vertical profiles. So of course, if you're worried about water intake, what's happening at the surface is not as relevant as what's mixing down. So a lot of research going in there. You said it best, data, 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 data. We can never have enough data sources. And here are what we use with the Weather Service. A lot of the forecast observational buoys that we have. Thank you for the one you guys put in over here. It's great. This information is used to drive a lot of what they put into the bulletin, because they need to know what kind of mixing to expect, what kind of currents, and we have the forecast models, of course, but we couldn't do it without the real-time data. All right, I'm going to go ahead and click this video because it's 4 o'clock and you guys probably want a little video. Let's see. Is it this one? Okay, here we go. Like I said, the Weather Service has kind of a limited role in all this HAB stuff, but we're kind of branching into newer areas, and this is one of the tools that we've come up with. This is just a little minute video. It's not on the audio. All right, while we get technical support. So when it comes to rainfall information, we all know how much of an influence the rainfall data is on not just the trying to forecast, but on the observational data. Again, I apologize for the loss of your equipment on Sunday. But when it comes to
responsibility,
sure, go ahead. I always say it's a money back guarantee with our forecast, so I'll take the blame on that one. Okay, it's working now. But when it comes to the rainfall forecast, obviously, if we get one major event, that's going to change any kind of a predictive model. And what's happened in Ohio is that they come up with Senate one where there's regulations now on any kind of a forecast of a half an inch or I want to say 50% chance of rain. So here, let me go ahead and just play this now. This might describe it for you.
However, these nutrients intended for crops can find their way into our streams, and to reduce nutrient runoff, a multi-agency effort brought together the National Weather Service, universities, and other state and federal agencies. Together, they developed a tool tailored to the needs of farmers and nutrient applicators.
It takes into consideration soil moisture modeling, and so how wet the soil is going to be before that forecasted rainfall. It looks several days out, so farmers are able to see if today is or isn't a good day, if the next 2, 3, up to 5 days will or won't be better for them. And it also, during the winter time, takes into consideration models related to snow melt.
protect our lakes, it'll protect our streams and rivers, and ultimately it'll do a better job of protecting large bodies of water, the Great Lakes, Mississippi River watershed, or even the Gulf of Mexico.
Okay, there's a much longer video if anyone wanted to learn a little bit more about that. The law in Ohio, our role in what we thought was just a supportive role is now there's legal implications to our forecast and then how it's utilized. So this is an evolving, oh goodness. Okay, here we go.
the role that we have is really expanding into the eco realm. And what I wanted to actually turn around and ask you guys, and we can do sidebars after the fact too, is clearly a lot of the research that you do involves some weather information. And, you know, I'd be curious to hear how we could assist with the research community on providing you the best quality rainfall information, temperature information, lake temperature information, lake ice information. Now, granted, you might already have access to this information, but we would also like to see what we could do to try to provide that all in a one-stop shop. Because if you're familiar with NOAA, you know you have to do a lot of searching to find the information you're looking for. So we have a website on the National Weather Service office in Cleveland for the HAB that's focused again on the Western Basin, but we can work together to incorporate some information that would help you with what you're doing as well. So we can sidebar that after the fact. Okay, future work. Go ahead. Essentially, moving forward, NOAA is trying to expand our role. We're trying to improve the models and the tools that we have to not only monitor, but actually predict. And I've seen tremendous improvement in it just in the last few years. So what they're doing is they're starting to expand the number of areas that they're trying to do forecasts for. So I think the work being done here in Presque, it seems like this might be the future just for this area. NOAA's always willing to work with state and local agencies. I think that's where most of you guys come in, to make new HAB forecasts. Okay, so here are some of the links to the information. I'm sure these will be provided after the fact for anyone who's interested in any of the stuff that we talked about, the HAB bulletin, some of the Galeral HAB tracker, basically what I call the spotter program, the phytoplankton monitoring network, and the rapid response programs. And because I'm not a subject matter expert, I'd be happy to take some questions, but if I can't give you the proper answer, this is the team at NOAA responsible for all things HAB, and they're great. So I can go ahead and try to take any questions you might have. How much snow we're gonna get? I'm open to anything. We got time. Am I the last speaker? So we got time. Want to ask me about the tornado track? Yeah.
What's better, the Farmer's Almanac or NOAA?
Microphone start. What? Well, actually, I will throw this out there. The predictions for the winter, and then subsequently into the spring, wetter. The trend is for it to be a little bit warmer, but I don't know if I believe that. But we'll go with that. But wetter. I don't like the wetter. Especially when we're talking about HABs. So, well, since we have a minute, I'm actually going to show you the webpage too. So if anyone else has any other questions. Okay, if you're looking for weather information, I'm sure that you all go to weather.gov/Cleveland. You can type Cleveland or just CLE. We actually have information right now at the top on the tornado event that just hit this. Was anyone near the track of this tornado? Anyone out that way? You weren't hit, were you?
No, one right over my house though.
Well, you're very lucky then. But actually what I wanted to point out here was the Lake Erie harmful algae bloom. Okay, so what we have on this page, and this is where I really am interested in input from people in this room, still loading, on how we can improve and add content onto this page. I have the USGS portal. It's loading. Here we go. This is the page where I really want to expand it, and I also want to have a section for climatology where if I can get recommendations from the research community on, for instance, what would be useful for you. Is rainfall information over a certain season? Is it weekly? Is it daily? Is it for basin? Is it for spots? What would be useful? You know, help us shape and design this webpage. That's what I'm looking for. So, some of the key areas of interest we have monitoring in Lake Erie, public water systems. This is where the USGS Nowcaster is located. some of the information that you guys are producing? Oh, no, please go ahead.
You know, so one of the things that we always kind of have a hard time with, so if you were sitting here for my talk, I think, so I mentioned that mixing is kind of an interesting issue, and it's one of those kind of hard to define parameters if you're not right there on the spot. So you can look at wave height, you can look at wave frequency, but some measure or of vertical mixing would be great. Because one of the hypotheses that I think a lot of people are working on is that when the bottom is resuspended back up into the water column, then you have a release of nutrients and potentially a reinoculation of cells. But there's not really a good measure except for wave height that would serve as kind of a proxy for that.
And is that uniform across like the lake?
No.
Because I would think Presque Bay versus Sandusky Bay versus the Western Basin. That's a very interesting, we'd be interested to work with somebody on that.
You asked what data? That's what I would like that.
Well, I'll throw this out there. The head of the National Weather Service is the one who decided that the Weather Service should have an active role in ecosystems. And this is relatively new. So he's charged us with doing something with ecosystems, but without a clear direction. So he's kind of leaving it to us to feel it out. So I think our options are pretty broad, and let's at least bring ideas to the table, and then we can work them up the ladder. So that rarely happens in the federal government, people. So I say let's take advantage of it.
So our USGS team, we'd love to have a call with you guys and just kind of hash it out. We're actually meeting in a couple of weeks face to face, but after that meeting, we'll probably have a little bit more idea if we have any data gaps. So it might be a good time to talk.
Yep, great. And the Weather Service is also trying to be involved with outreach on the whole algae problem too. So if there are issues, alerts and stuff here in Presque that you want us to have on these pages, send us links, and then we can even include it when we try to brief Washington D.C. on the situation. So, okay.
Another question here.
Yeah, I would swear that last summer we had an anomalous event, which I think was related to some peculiar changes in the direction and intensity of the wind. Where it looked like within a matter of a week we had a huge maybe influx of lake water into the bay, and it caused a dramatic change in the plankton community. And I don't know if there's any way to kind of differently represent the wind data in terms of patterns and peculiar transitions in wind direction.
Well, I'm
because
sure
that affects us in a big way.
Well, I'm sure there's a way that a climatology per se could be developed. Do they take water level readings here in the bay?
We have a level station installed at the channel between Presque Bay and Lake Erie.
Yeah, those are the kind of tools that we can put two and two together. We can start to develop a climatology.
What I don't think, I'm not aware of anything that predicts, that uses wind velocity and direction and speed to predict Seiche events.
Well,
we can watch the history of the lake level changing at various locations up and down Lake Erie, but I don't know of anything that predicts that.
with accuracy? There are some models, and from the Weather Service perspective, we would do low water, and then flood warnings for higher waters in the lake. So it's fairly rudimentary. It's not very sophisticated, but we do have some wave models that we use. Now they're not detailed enough for Presque Bay, but Erie shoreline and things like that, we can, and I'm sure there could be a correlation from that. But there are some models. Again, the quality on Lake Erie, it needs forecaster interaction. And the Weather Service is actually developing what they call a total water. So for instance, if you're on the coastline, if you've got a storm surge, in addition to your normal tidal action and high and low tides, they're trying to actually predict how high is the water actually going to be above ground level. something that's always been a need, but we've never actually been able to produce. So it's the same models, even though we don't have tides per se. I haven't heard that coming to the Great Lakes, but I believe it is anticipated soon.
Folks who have boats and or operate marinas are very aware of the water level fluctuations hour to hour, as well as from season to season. But and we've had, of course, almost historically high lake levels this past spring. That's subsided a little bit now. But I don't know how I don't know how to quantify the impact on Presque Bay's water quality and ecosystem as a result of an influx of water from Lake Erie. Mike, that's what you were suggesting, I think.
Or the opposite, if the wind's from a particular direction, it can blow a lot of water through the channel out into the lake.
If Lake Erie goes up a foot, Presque Bay is going to respond over some time period to that, and there's going to be a tremendous amount of inflow through the channel. And then 6 hours later, that's going to go down.
I think there was an incident several years ago where they actually went up 5 feet in the channel.
I'm not at all surprised.
Yeah.
That's quite possible.
Within a short period, it went right back down.
Yeah.
Like a meteor tsunami kind of thing?
Yeah.
But no, these are some of the ideas that I like to hear, because there may be stuff that we have or are working on that could be incorporated.
Is it possible to monitor the water during the winter half of the year? The buoys that we operate here, the Regional Science Consortium has several buoys, but they come out of the water in the fall because they'll be destroyed otherwise. And so we don't have any data.
Now what kind of data, you're looking for, like the wind or water level or wave action?
The typical suite of water quality parameters that we routinely see: oxygen and temperature and conductivity and
I can't speak on those elements. I can say that the Weather Service will model all the weather elements. The
I'm not
wind.
talking about modeling. I'm talking about just measuring. I don't know. I don't think that. I don't know how the weatherman knows the temperature of Lake Erie off the Erie coastline.
Oh.
In January.
Oh, that? Well, the Weather Service will call the water plants. That's usually where we get that information. If that's where the TV people are getting it, it's from us, then that's where we're getting it. Yeah.
And here in Erie, our water intakes are out in Lake Erie, not in Presque Bay. So that information from the inflow of water to the water treatment plant comes from a few miles out into the lake,
Yes.
as opposed to our little harbor.
Yes, which the preference was, so that you're getting more of the lake water and not the shoreline. We can house all kinds of information on our website. That would be helpful, even if it's stuff that you guys are collecting. If you're collecting water temperature in Presque Bay, we can archive that. There's I think opportunity to collaborate. So just keep this in mind if there's a research study that you're doing and it just seems like there's some way the Weather Service may be able to help provide information or work together on. And I don't think is my email address shared? Otherwise, I'm afraid I didn't I'll put it on the PowerPoint, and then when I get that shared, it'll be on there. So, okay. All right, thank you.